Good morning, everybody. This is Dan Frugero from the JRP Group, and I welcome you to this episode of Contracts and Disclosures. Today, we're going to follow up on the episode we had earlier today on requests for repairs. And in essence, this is kind of like a counter offer response. This is the seller's response and the buyer reply to the original request for repair. So if the original request for repair was number one, we're going to identify that now. And then it's going to be, and this is in accordance with the conditions and the request for repair of item number one, which was request for repair, and then whatever that date was. So I believe we were said September 30th in our example. This is the address of the property, and then we'd be putting in the buyer's name, and then we'd also be putting in the seller's name. And then we're going to go into the seller agrees to the following. Number one is if they agree to all of the buyer's request, then they're going to head and check this box in, they're going to say they agree to all the buyer's request in the request for repair number one, except for maybe what? So let's say they're going to say item number two or item number four. Let's say there's two items that they chose that they did not want to agree on. They're going to identify those and they'll go ahead and put those in. Carried away there with my typing, but it's item one and item two. At the close of escrow, let's say they're going to credit the buyer. So instead of actually doing any of the work, let's say they're just going to, at the close of escrow, they're going to credit the buyer, let's say $3,500. So they might do that. Number three, they might want to reduce the purchase price too. So let's say that listing is at $350,000, and let's say they're going to reduce the price down to $325,000. They would identify there. Or let's say number four, D, if they choose to go a different direction, they might put on there, they are going to do items number three and number four, and they might do some cash as well. So whatever it is that the seller and the buyer want to agree to, if there's any addendum attached, as far as any credit included in this paragraph is separate from and shall not reduce or supersede any other credit in this agreement unless specifically agreed to now. And then if you check this box, it's going to go ahead and populate an addendum. Number item two, seller's agreement only if applies if the buyer. So let's say the seller agreement removes in writing the physical inspection contingency, or B, for example, removes those contingencies identified in the contingency removal. And what happened is we successfully added in a contingency removal form. So that would be item number one. It's the first contingency removal number one. And then what they're going to be able to do is sign this form. The buyer's reply to the seller's response. So now it's going to be maybe a continuing counter. The buyer accepts the seller's response, or possibly here the buyer accepts the seller's response with the following modifications. So they might say, I agree to item one, not item four, and then they would go ahead and send their response. If the buyer withdraws the request for repair, which would be repair number one, they might make a new request, which would now become request for repair number two. And then the buyer would sign, and then we go down to the very bottom, and again, it specifies this only applies if the buyer checked 1B. And if we go back to 1B, it simply states seller's response to buyer request 1B at the close of escrow to credit buyer $3,500. So in this case, these items would not be present, nor would the purchase price change. So if only 1B is marked 1B, we go back down here where it specifies only applies if 1B, the seller agrees to the modification of terms provided, or the seller does not agree to the buyer modification. Again, the buyer may submit a new request for repair, and then the seller signs. And then hopefully you'll be able to work your contract out. So I appreciate you stopping in, and we'll see you next time.